cop, Vidya Jyoti, played by Kajol, walks into a store ये बहाना बना के कि मुझे अगरबत्ती खरीदनी है. इस अगरबत्ती की खोज में she actually stumbles upon a set of twins and now she's confused कि मेरा केस यहाँ से कहाँ जाने वाला है. Hi, I'm Pratiksha Mishra and you're listening to my review of Do Patti. Before we get into this, a content warning is in place because we will be discussing subjects such as domestic violence and intimate partner violence. So keep that in mind as we continue. ये जो film का subject है और या जो premise है, that is probably something you've already seen before. We find out that a cop is called over to a house because they heard disturbance. The people in the house, however, tell her कि कुछ नहीं हुआ है, आप आराम से जाओ, there's nothing to be worried about. But she has an inkling कि something is definitely wrong. The story then introduces Soumya, played by Kriti Sanon, who falls in love with this very confident, brash, charming person played by Shahir Sheikh. His name is Dhruv Sood. And Soumya is perhaps attracted to him because he makes her feel freer than she has in general, and she feels a little unafraid around him. Relationships की अगर बात करें, so the most defining relationship in this film is not the one between Dhruv and Soumya, it's actually the one between Soumya and her sister Shaili. सौम्या और शैली जब बड़े हो रहे थे, there was a clear favoritism that was going on in Soumya's favor. They go through a very traumatic experience and both have very different reactions to it. Soumya ज़्यादा सहमी रहती है, she's more emotional, she seems to be more emotionally affected by all of this. और उसके चलते people kind of forget to see कि शैली पर भी इसका असर पड़ा है. Nobody is actually looking at why Shaili is acting out in the ways that she does. So this also naturally affects how they act as adults. और दोनों के बीच में एक rivalry सी हो जाती है where both of them don't want to lose to the other. अगर आप ट्रेलर देखो या you just use a little bit of deduction, you know what's going to happen. Shaili shows up right when Soumya is ready to kind of, give a chance to this budding relationship between her and Dhruv. And suddenly एक अजीब सा disturbing सा love triangle शुरू हो जाता है तीनों के बीच में, and both the sisters are still in that mindset where they're like, I am not going to lose to my sister. Now here, Do Patti, directed by Shashanka Shrivastava and written by Kanika Dhillon, takes a bit of a shift. We get to see what these relationships are actually like behind the door, all while Kajol's character Vidya is trying to figure out कि ये case बन किस चीज़ का रहा है. विद्या और हमें भी दिख रहा है कि समथिंग इज रॉन्ग विद दीज रिलेशनशिप्स, पर हर इंसान विद्या को यही बोलता रहता है कि शी इज नॉट गोइंग टू फाइल अ कंप्लेन. द वुमन इन क्वेश्चन इज नॉट गोइंग टू फाइल अ कंप्लेन अगेंस्ट हर हस्बैंड. नथिंग इज गोइंग टू चेंज. दिस इज अ लॉस्ट कॉज. वन ऑफ द बेस्ट थिंग्स अबाउट दिस फिल्म इज दैट द राइटिंग डज नॉट जज एनी ऑफ दीज कैरेक्टर्स. अक्सर ऐसा होता है व्हेन वी हियर अबाउट इश्यूज ऑफ डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस और इंटीमेट पार्टनर वायलेंस, पीपल से कि ओके, व्हाई आर यू इन द अब्यूजिव रिलेशनशिप, जस्ट लीव. बट इट्स नेवर दैट सिंपल. ये जो एक सेंटेंस है, जस्ट लीव, इज एक्चुअली very nuanced and also does not touch upon at all about how complicated the dynamic can be in an abusive relationship. A lot of times we hear people in society say कि नहीं अब इसमें हम इन्वॉल्व होकर क्या करेंगे, ये उनके घर का निजी मामला है, ये उनके घर की प्रॉब्लम है, ये उनकी रिलेशनशिप की प्रॉब्लम, वो आपस में सुलझा लेंगे. But that's not true. I like that Do Patti explores कि anyone who looks away from this, anyone who has the power to do something and still turns a blind eye to something like this is also complicit. When you silence people, when you create a culture of silencing, you are also playing a part in everything and you're not on the side of the oppressed. And before I go deeper into that narrative thread, I want to tell you that your support matters a lot. At the Quint, we're able to tell the stories that we want to tell in the ways that we want to tell them, with honesty and integrity, because we tell them together with your support. So if you haven't become a member of the Quint yet, go and do that. Let's continue to the review. I watched a film recently called On Becoming a Guinea Fowl that deals with similar themes, where we see how the collective denial of a family makes sure that a lot of things, a lot of very problematic things just get brushed under the rug, and this does still affect the people. Honestly, Do Patti would not have been the film that it is without Kriti Sanon. A magnificent performance, or maybe I should say performances, because she's playing two characters. Pitch perfect. वो हर सीन में इतना इमोशनल हेफ्ट ले आती हैं that even when the dialogues feel a little corny or don't fit into the setting, she makes it work. I honestly don't get how she delivered a dialogue like surprise या shock so convincingly. Then there's Kajol, and I mean, it's Kajol. She obviously does a fantastic job. एक issue जो मुझे इस फिल्म में लगा is that there is an accent that she has to do that it feels like she's slipping in and out of, and that does make her character feel a little inconsistent. And even if you do ignore that, I feel like उनकी जो characterization है, जो character writing है, is a little bit weak, so she doesn't become as effective as she could have. जैसे there's also a detail about her character about being a cop and a lawyer that doesn't make sense to me. Like, I don't think I have the knowledge required to understand that, or I don't think that is legally how that situation should have played out. And that is another issue with this film, is that in the direction there are a few flaws that you just can't look away from. ऐसी जो फिल्में होती हैं in the thriller genre or even like the detective police procedural genre, there are some details that are hidden from the audience. I feel like इस फिल्म के जो reveals हैं, जो twists and turns हैं, वो आपको पहले ही थोड़े से पता चल जाते हैं, and that's because they're not being hidden properly, they're not being shrouded properly, and that honestly bothered me because it took away a lot from my experience of the film. क्योंकि film के beginning में I was very invested in the first half of the film. I genuinely was very into what they were telling as a story, but once that happens, once the predictability sets in, वो effect film का कम हो जाता है, and that genuinely is a pity. Another performance that I really enjoyed was Shahir Sheikh's performance as Dhruv. This is someone who is an Amir Baap ki bigdi hui aulad, and he acts that way, and it just starts feeling a little one tone towards the end, but his performance is perfect. I feel like I have seen him in roles that are these very romantic, perfect, charming men on TV screens, because I was a huge Kuch Rang Pyar Ke Aise Bhi fan. Like, I watched it every day when it aired and watched reruns. So to see him in a role like this was actually quite refreshing. There's also Brijendra Kala, Tanvi Azmi, both doing magnificent jobs on screen. And honestly, that's the thing about Do Patti. ये जो actual film है, the actual substance of the film is between the lines. film में बहुत जगह आपको references सुनने को मिलेंगे to Sita और Geeta starring Hema Malini. The main point of Sita और Geeta was that one of the sisters was very calm, very mindful, very demure, and the other one was brash and outspoken and took absolutely no nonsense from anyone. And that is similar with these sisters as well. Soumya is the Sita and Shelly is the Geeta. But unlike Sita or Geeta, this film gives them one common love interest and actually looks into another very interesting aspect of these characters. This is a very common trope, and I do not love the name of the trope, but this is the Madonna whore complex or the Madonna mistress complex. Let's call it the MWC, where we see that there is either the pure, chaste, perfect woman who is seen as, you know, that trope where like, oh, this is someone you can take home to your parents, and then there's the other woman who's usually seen partying in clubs, she's smoking or drinking, she's more outspoken, she has more agency in a very misogynist sense. One is presented in the media as desirable, while the other is shown as someone who needs to be molded into the previous category to be desirable. But when push comes to shove, who is he going to choose between the two of them, and what is influencing his decision? That is a very interesting thread that the film also pulls. फिल्म में कई जगह ऐसा भी होता है कि वी सी दैट सम सीन्स आर टू स्ट्रेच्ड आउट, काफ़ी देर तक चल रहे हैं, स्पेशली सम सीन्स वेयर वी सी वायलेंस हैपनिंग, इट गोज ऑन फॉर अ टैड बिट टू लॉन्ग, एंड समटाइम्स वी फील लाइक द स्क्रीन प्ले इज बीइंग रश्ड, लाइक you're being given information so that they can get to the next point, and that also affects your film viewing experience a lot. Honestly, I couldn't stop thinking about the Netflix mini series Made, definitely a must watch by the way, and the way that show deals with things like domestic abuse, with abusive relationships, intimate partner violence, how the women who are affected by it deal with their lives, the choices that they make, the decisions that they make, how they try to build a life through all of that is explored so magnificently well in Made. And while there are some shades of that happening in Do Patti, it still sometimes feels a little lackluster. Like, there is a conversation here worth having, and I'm glad that this film has done its best to try and hit all the right notes, and that is why, mostly because of the intention behind this film and also the potential that I kind of felt like it lost along the way, my rating for Do Patti on Netflix is 3 stars out of 5.